Welcome back! Now that you've laid the groundwork, you're ready to create your first Cascading Objectives cycle in Small Improvements. Now, if you've already used our Objectives module in the past, this process will be very familiar to you. And if you're using Objectives for the first time, no need to fear. The process is very straightforward. Let's take a look. Start by toggling over to your admin view and navigating to your Objectives dashboard. Then, in the upper right corner, click the yellow Create Cycle button. In the first step, you'll decide who is participating in this cycle. You can easily select the entire company, or you have the option to filter out specific teams and specific individuals. In the next step, you'll give your cycle a public-facing name and introduction message. Keep in mind that this introduction message is visible to employees every time they create a new objective. So this is a great place to leave any specific instructions you want them to keep in mind. For example, anyone in Small Improvements can create a company or group level objective, but maybe you only want employees creating individual objectives for themselves. This is a great place to remind them to select individual as the objective type. Next up, we have the process settings. First, you need to decide who is able to create and edit objectives. We definitely recommend empowering your employees to create their own objectives, since that way they'll have a greater feeling of ownership over their goals. However, with that being said, if you'd prefer to take a more top-down approach, you can also limit the ability to create objectives to just managers and HR admins. Next, you'll choose the default visibility level for all new objectives created as part of this cycle. We always recommend keeping objectives public, since that way, employees have greater transparency into your company's priorities, the priorities of other business units, and they also have better insight into what their colleagues are working on, allowing them to identify opportunities for collaboration and avoid duplicating efforts. With that said, if you'd prefer to keep objectives protected between employees, their management chain, and your HR admin team, you also have that option. If you don't want employees adjusting that default visibility level, be sure to deselect the box below. And finally, automatic reminders are a great way to hold employees accountable and remind them as they're approaching their objectives deadlines. In this next section, be sure to enable cascading objectives so that you can enter company and team goals in addition to individual goals. Most of our customers also find value in key results, which allows employees to create a checklist of the specific steps that they'll take in order to achieve each of their goals. Finally, we also recommend enabling statuses. This allows employees to periodically update a status label for each of their objectives, ranging from not started to in progress to achieved or deferred. Finally, it's time to set your dates and deadlines. This first date refers to when the cycle kicks off and opens up for employees to begin entering their goals. If we're setting goals for Q4, we probably want the cycle to open up a couple of weeks ahead of time. The next date refers to when employees can no longer create new objectives or edit the substance of their existing ones, meaning the title, the description, and the items in the key results checklist. Again, if we're setting goals for Q4, we probably want objectives to be created within the first couple of weeks of the quarter. Updating objectives refers to crossing items off of your key results checklist and changing the status label. Most of our customers choose to allow employees to update their objectives indefinitely. That way, if they miss a deadline, they still can update their progress after that deadline has passed. With that being said, if you do want to lock objectives from further updates at a certain date, you can deselect this box here on the left and set your deadline here on the right. Finally, you can suggest a due date for all objectives created as part of this cycle, but employees will be able to change that suggested due date as they choose. Now, if your cycle is scheduled to begin at a future date, your cycle overview dashboard will be a bit more limited than what I'm looking at here. However, you should still have access to this admin drop-down menu here in the upper right, and the ability to edit your cycle settings in case you need to go back and make changes to any of the settings that we've just selected. Once that cycle start date passes, you'll also have this notify menu, which allows you to trigger the email that announces to employees that the cycle is open and urges them to log in and start entering their goals. From this page, you can also create objectives on behalf of another employee. So, for example, you might find your CEO in the list of participants and use this plus button here on the right to create your company objectives in your CEO's name. Be sure to select the appropriate objective type. Finally, notice the nudge buttons here on this dashboard. Every so often, as the cycle is in progress, you may wish to visit this dashboard and use those nudges to trigger reminder emails to any employees who is falling behind on creating or updating their goals. Congratulations on setting up your first Cascading Objectives cycle in Small Improvements. You're ready to hit the ground running.